Hello, welcome to our presentation on understanding the social impact analysis for the schools presented by myself. So ours is basically the presentation is for understanding having the doing the impact study. That means what factors say help in the enrollment of the disabled students. So the hypothesis is that the disabled students need special cares and schools having more percentage of disabled students are doing things differently. Right. So what we did was we basically cleaned up the entire Dise data and we made it in a format in which it's very easily, to slice and dice in analysis through the analysis. So we found out the schools employing the top 20% of disabled students in terms of number of students. Then we next understood the demographics of the schools, understood the village, the block level details, understood the student profile by sex and type of disability, understood the teacher profile, and then try to look at the incentives and the facilities. So first we got the top 20% of the schools. So out of the 470 schools, we found that actually about 8 were actually accounting for more than 20% enrollment. So we did this. We from the disability, this complete master sheet, we made a pivot table, and we got the sum of disabilities, and we selected the top 20%. Next, we started actually slicing and dicing by various parameters to look at it. So now let's assume that we will just pick up the ones which are critical. So like for sex, we found that the boys were more than the girls across all the schools. And in terms of disability type, we found out that the locomotor impairment was significantly more than the mental locomotive impairment and mental retardation were the key disabilities across most of the schools, right? And for other parameters, it was actually not very significant. So I'll just basically go through it. Then the next I look at the school profiles. So I open up a different sheet. I open up the enrollment, and I look at what are the types of in terms of number of schools, and what are the type of the what are the types of the schools which are going to be there. So if we look at it this way, we looked at it by sex. We looked at it by the sex. Of course, the boys were more than the girls, but there were some other parameters which were there. For example, no school was residential. Right. So if I pick it up, school type. So pick it up here, and if I pick up this thing, so no schools for residential. So you come up here. Residential school, no, so no school was actually residential. And then the other findings came out from the pivots. Most of the these two were the key villages, where most of the schools were spread across CRCs. All the top schools were actually within these 3 education blocks, so we wanted to see what is the reason for that. Then all the top schools were all co-educational. All the top schools were approachable by road, right? Then no school was a shift school, so full-time schools. No school was residential. The medium of instruction was primarily Hindi or Bengali, and there was no significant difference in grants and expenditure for the top performing schools. Right. Now, if you look at the teacher one, then we started to analyze it in terms of the teachers. So if you look at the sex, so of course, females are by and large more than the males. But then we looked at certain other factors, that what is the education they have, right? So what is the type of education they have? So we looked at the highest education. So most of them were higher secondary or the postgraduate. Then we looked at what is the highest professional qualification. So most of them have got a basic teacher's training or a B.Ed degree. That's good news. Then we went further down, that most of them were actually appointed for teaching all the subjects. That was something which was very interesting, that very few teachers were actually specialized. Then you can actually slice and dice down further, and you can look at what are the types of disabilities. So if you look at the disability flag, that actually only very few teachers were actually disabled, right? And if you look at whether trained for teaching, CWCN, so we find that very few teachers actually are trained for teaching CWCN. Right, and then you can keep on slicing and dicing and actually look at the data in terms of in terms of various parameters. So this is what we found, which was a critical factor. The feature, the second one was that what are the factors which help in the enrollment of the ST students. So in this case, what we did was we found out the schools employing the top 40% of the ST students in terms of number of students, understood the demographic of the schools, student profile, teachers, educational qualifications profile, understood the incentives, and so forth. Right. So again, we went about it. We selected top schools. So again, only 8 schools came out of 470 schools, which actually had 40% of ST enrollment. That was a critical thing. These are this thing. And again, the profile of these schools was that they were all co-education run by department, approachable by road, non-residential primary schools. Again, the student profile was that what we found out was that in two of the top schools, 10 schools, actually there was no primary enrollment, which we also found was very surprising. Then we tried to understand this thing. So primarily free textbooks, free uniforms are the top two incentives across all the schools, and also we found that the incentive patterns were the same. So this is the incentives across all the schools, and this is the incentives across the top uh, schools, which are accounting for 40%. So the incentive structures remains by and large the same. There are other additions which are possible: enrollment by other combinations, new admissions, repeaters, and by examination results. With this, we come on to the end of this small presentation. In case you're interested, you can contact us. Thank you very much for your time.